So we've unboxed it, we've set it up, and now it's time to answer the big question. Can this refurbished xTool P2 actually perform like a brand new one? Today we're going to put this thing to the test. Real cuts, real engraves, and real materials. And at the end, I'll show you how one of these test cuts turned into something that now lives right on my desk. If you've been following along this journey so far, thank you for being here. And if you're brand new, welcome. In part 1, we unboxed this refurbished P2, and honestly, it looked brand new. And in part 2, we walked through the setup, including filling the water tank, calibration, the whole thing. But we all know the age-old saying, can't judge a book by its cover. Just because it looks great, does it perform great? We're gonna find out. So today we're putting it to the test. I've got plywood, MDF, acrylic, hardwood, even some soft pine lined up in different sizes and thicknesses. We'll be seeing if this refurbished P2 can live up to a brand new one, and if the P2 is as great as everyone says. Can it really slice through hardwood cleanly? Will it leave burnt edges or struggle halfway through? What about engraving detail? Especially something tricky like a photo of my dog, maybe? We're about to find out. As mentioned, we're going to be cutting different thicknesses, including 3mm, 6mm, all the way to 19mm wood, and including some acrylic and MDF. For these test cuts, I'm going to be using xTool software, xTool Creative Space. I've been using the software since the first purchase of my xTool M1, and I think it's pretty great for a free software. Is it perfect? No, but find me a software that doesn't have faults. Now, one cool thing about using the XTS software is that it has a library of materials that you can choose from that will provide you with their tested and recommended settings for that particular material type and thickness. It's a great starting point if you're new to a machine or if you're using an unfamiliar material. The materials that I'll be starting out with are materials that I've used in the past, and right off the bat, I noticed that the recommended settings were very similar to those that I would use for my 10-watt laser, and I figured that couldn't possibly be right considering that this machine has 5 times the power. So I did a bit of adjusting to the test grids off camera because there's no use in wasting material, right? Now, here's what the P2 can do to a pretty standard 3mm piece of plywood. Nice clean cuts, as I hoped, and nowhere near the recommended settings, by the way. If I can avoid using my machine at full power, I'd prefer to go that route. Just to note, I'll be sharing a link to the exact settings and the material test grids I'm using for each of these materials in the description below. Here's a sheet of 3mm hardboard that I've also used in the past, and I am very impressed. For comparison, on my N1, this would take multiple passes at a very slow millimeter per second, maybe around 10 to 15 minutes, whereas the P2, this took a minute and some? Now for the fun materials. I've been getting this question so much when sharing older videos of me using my M1. Can you cut acrylic? Does it do transparent acrylic? And I would reply with such disappointment every time. But now I finally get to see this in action, and it's going to be a game changer for my future projects, the products I'm able to offer for my business, and I cannot wait. So the P2 actually came with some acrylic for testing, but I had this little piece lying around from an older project of mine. So I'm going to be testing it on this because I'm going to save the good stuff. Oh man, you have no idea how much time this saves. I no longer have to use a scroll saw for my acrylic and manually cut these out. Think ornaments and whatnot, if you're into that kind of thing. I'm just thinking about all the sign options I can now offer. Now that we've got the acrylics out the way, it's time to step it up with thickness. We're now going to try cutting this 6mm MDF. And again, if this can cut, it's going to give me so much time back. And just like that, it's clean. Now we're going to be ramping it up to 8mm hardwood. This is oak, I believe, and as you can see here, I had to cut the material test grid twice because I realized the first one had the exact same settings of 90 power and 45mm speed, so here's the correct one. Now for the 10mm plywood. I feel like my M1 would just laugh at me if I try to even put this near it. So I started lasering this, but honestly, I stopped it because I was a little nervous. Because of the wonky layers that I had showed, it wasn't cutting quite right. It was only taking off the top layer, and because the air assist is so strong, it wasn't really falling off, and I was afraid that this would get in the way or start a flame, or I just wanted to avoid it. I have no doubts that this would cut the 10mm wood, but I just don't think that this is the best piece to test it. And finally, the 19mm soft pine. Now, I kept looking at this little piece of wood and couldn't stop envisioning a cassette tape. I can't help the 90s child in me. So I figured I'd play around with the cut settings until we can get it to look like one. Here was my result. Since I wasn't familiar with this material, I started off with xTool's recommended settings and kind of gradually just went down from there. So each hole in this cassette is lower power, and I adjusted the speed as well. Now that I've tested it, I wouldn't go with the recommended settings for this because, as you can see, it resulted in a lot of scorching. That's because this was not a one-pass job. It recommended to do 3. So with each hole, I gradually went lower power, and I did also try some with 2 passes, but I didn't quite get the perfect combination. I just know it's definitely not 3 passes, 100 power. Here's what I'm thinking would potentially work for this. Now that we've cut through all these materials, it's time for the engraving portion. And what better test subject than my beautiful Chihuahua? So I got this picture all set up in XCS, and I'm pretty sure that these settings will work across these materials, but I'll adjust as needed, and of course, I'll share them with you. I started the engraving process with this 3mm plywood. Once again, the recommended settings provided weren't too accurate for this. I think it could definitely use a bit more power. Now I'm going to try this engraving again on acrylic. I, for one, am not a portrait engraving master, and I either didn't adjust this photo correctly, or I probably should have inverted it. Either way, it's not the laser's fault, and this was the result. So now that we've dug into cutting, engraving, different sizes of wood, different thicknesses of wood, different types of materials, I would say that it definitely does deliver. On each of the materials I tested, this refurbished P2 pretty much cut clean. Some of the settings may need to be adjusted here and there, but overall, I'd say this performed. Even this thick 19mm pine. For a refurbished machine, this is very impressive, and I didn't notice any loss in power, alignment, or any random quirks. So I would say this machine lives up to its name. So what did we learn across all 3 parts of the series? Part 1, the Refurb P2 arrived in near perfect condition, beautifully packed and ready to go. Part 2, the setup was smooth, a few extra steps for coolant if you need to, calibration, but nothing crazy. Now part 3, performance-wise, I think it definitely works. Clean cuts, sharp engraves, and I didn't have any issues. So if you're still debating whether a refurbished P2 is worth it, and if they have them available, because as of recording this video, I've been hearing on and off that they don't have stock, then they were back in stock, so you're gonna have to check that out. And just so you know, this test is just the tip of the iceberg of what this machine can do. This was just testing cuts and engraves using the slats. I'll be engraving some 1.5-inch thick wood without the slats for a creative dice project that I've been designing. So if you're curious how the P2 handles with that big chunky material, keep an eye out for that video. If this video helped you out, or if you're working through your own laser journey, whether you're cutting your first plywood sheet or making your own desk toys like me, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you're working on, if you're thinking about getting a P2, or what's your first project. And of course, if you want to catch that upcoming dice project and other laser builds down the road, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. That's a wrap for this 3-part series on the refurbished xTool P2, from unboxing to setup to actual performance. So until next time, keep making, keep experimenting, and I'll catch you in the next one.